The neighborhood of Maple Ridge Estates was the kind of place that looked perfect, too perfect. Every house was painted in the same, approved shade of beige, every lawn cut at exactly 3 inches, and every driveway gleamed as if freshly scrubbed by the HOA itself. There were rules for everything: where to park, when to water your grass, and even how tall your mailbox post could be. For years, the residents took pride in their control. They called it community spirit. Outsiders called it tyranny, with a smile. When Jack Miller drove through the gated entrance that bright spring morning, the sunlight hit the bronze sign that read, "Welcome to Maple Ridge, a safe, family-oriented community." He took a long breath, looking over at the passenger seat where his daughter Emily, age 15, sat staring out the window, earbuds in, expression quiet. They'd been driving for 3 hours from their old town, the place where they used to live with Sarah, Jack's late wife. It had been a year since the cancer took her, and Jack thought a fresh start might help both of them heal. Maple Ridge seemed peaceful, at least on paper. "Looks nice, huh?" Jack said, trying to sound cheerful. Emily pulled one earbud out and smiled faintly. "It's clean," he chuckled. "That's one word for it." Their new home sat at the corner of a cul-de-sac, small, simple, with a porch swing Sarah would have loved. Jack unloaded boxes while Emily explored the backyard, where an old oak tree leaned protectively over the fence. It was quiet, almost too quiet. By evening, neighbors began to appear. Some waved politely. Others stared a bit too long. And then came her, Karen Dalton. Every neighborhood had one. Perfectly styled blonde hair, oversized sunglasses, clipboard in hand. The kind of woman who ran the HOA like a general. She approached with a forced smile. "You must be the new residents. I'm Karen, head of the Homeowners Association." Jack wiped his hands on his jeans and shook hers. "Jack Miller. This is my daughter, Emily." Karen's eyes flicked over Emily's worn hoodie and untied sneakers. "How charming," she said, her tone dipping ever so slightly. "We're happy to be here," Jack offered, ignoring it. Karen glanced at the truck, the boxes, and then at Jack's dusty boots. "We do have some rules about outdoor appearances. You'll get the handbook in the mail." "Of course," Jack said evenly. "Oh, and one more thing," she added with a tight smile. "We have a community meeting this Saturday. Attendance is mandatory for all new homeowners. See you there." And just like that, she was gone, clipboard swinging, perfume trailing behind her like smoke. Emily watched her disappear. "She seems nice," she said flatly. Jack laughed under his breath. "You've got a sharp eye, kiddo." The first week went smoothly enough. Jack spent his mornings fixing things around the house and his afternoons at the small mechanic shop where he'd taken a job. Emily started at Maple Ridge High, a school that looked like it belonged on a movie set, all glass windows and football banners. But fitting in wasn't easy. The other girls wore designer clothes, drove new cars, and spent lunch comparing vacations. Emily, quiet and artistic, sat alone most days, sketching in her notebook. Then came Chad Dalton, Karen's son. He was tall, smug, and popular for all the wrong reasons. He'd seen Emily get dropped off in her dad's old Ford truck and decided she was easy prey. "Nice ride," he sneered one morning. "What's that, a 1990 dinosaur?" Emily ignored him. She'd learned from her dad that silence was often stronger than words. Chad didn't like being ignored. By the end of the week, his friends were whispering when she passed, calling her army brat and charity case. Someone even taped a note to her locker that read, "Waiting for Superman? He's not coming." When Jack asked how school was going, Emily smiled weakly. "It's fine, Dad. Just different." He could tell something was off, but he'd been through war zones and loss, and sometimes the hardest battles were invisible. Saturday came, the community meeting. The Miller showed up right on time at the HOA clubhouse. Inside, neighbors sat in neat rows, coffee cups in hand, while Karen stood at the front like a queen addressing her court. "Welcome everyone," she announced. "As you know, we have new residents among us, the Millers. Let's all make them feel at home." A polite smattering of applause followed, though a few people just stared. Karen continued, outlining the latest HOA initiatives, New lawn inspections, security patrols, and a proposed curfew for non-conforming visitors. Jack listened quietly, noting every controlling word. When she opened the floor for questions, he raised his hand. So, what happens if someone doesn't agree with a rule? Karen blinked. Excuse me? I mean, what if a homeowner disagrees with the HOA's decision? Is there an appeal process? The room went silent. Karen's smile didn't reach her eyes. We haven't had that issue before, Mr. Miller. We like to think everyone here cooperates for the good of the community. Jack nodded slowly. Got it. Cooperation. When they left, Emily whispered, They don't like you asking questions. Jack smirked. Then I must be doing something right. The following week, the tension thickened. Emily caught Karen watching her from across the street one morning, arms folded. At school, Chad tripped her in the hallway, sending her books flying. When she told a teacher, he shrugged. Chad's mom is on the school board, he said quietly. That night, Jack found Emily crying in her room. Talk to me, Em, he said gently. She wiped her tears. It's nothing. I'm just tired. He sat beside her. You know I can tell when you're lying, right? Comes with the job. She laughed softly. I just don't fit here. They treat me like I don't belong. Jack nodded. That's on them, not you. You belong wherever you decide to stand. He paused, his voice low. Your mom used to say, never let small people make you feel small. Emily smiled faintly. Mom was brave. She was, Jack said, his eyes distant. And you are too. But bravery doesn't always protect you. The next afternoon, as the sun dipped low over Maple Ridge Park, Emily walked home alone, her sketchbook clutched to her chest. She didn't see Chad and his friends waiting by the swings. They'd planned something cruel. From behind the trees, laughter echoed. Hey, Emily. She turned and froze. The wind was cold that afternoon, the kind that rustled the trees and made the swings creak on their chains. Emily stood frozen, her heart thumping as Chad and his two friends, Tyler and Max, stepped out from behind the oak trees. Chad had that smirk again, the one she'd seen all week. Hey, sketch girl, he said, tossing a rock from hand to hand. What's the rush? Don't you want to hang out? Emily tightened her grip on her sketchbook. Leave me alone, Chad. Oh, come on. He moved closer, his friends snickering behind him. We're just trying to welcome you to the neighborhood. My mom says you're different. Emily tried to step past him, but Tyler blocked her path. Where are you going? Superman's not coming to save you. That word, Superman, made them laugh. Her eyes stung. She pushed past them, but Chad grabbed her backpack strap and yanked her back. Hey, we're talking to you. Her sketchbook fell, pages scattering. One page caught in the wind, a pencil drawing of her and her mom sitting under a tree. Chad picked it up, glancing at it before tearing it in half. Emily gasped. Stop. That's my mom's. Oh, boo-hoo, Chad mocked. You gonna cry? She shoved him hard. He stumbled back, surprised. The laughter stopped for a moment. Then his face hardened. You shouldn't have done that. Tyler and Max looked at each other. Chad, come on. But Chad's pride was on fire. He grabbed the rope that hung from the playground swing and twisted it into a noose-like loop. Let's see if Superman really flies in to save you. Before Emily could move, they looped it around her shoulders, laughing as she tried to pull away. Her cries echoed across the empty park. For a few terrifying seconds, she lost her balance, the rope pulling against her neck. Then, headlights flashed. A truck screeched to a stop at the park's edge. Jack. He'd been on his way home from work when he spotted the group at the park, 3 boys surrounding a girl who looked far too familiar. When he realized it was Emily, something inside him broke. He was out of the truck before it stopped rolling, sprinting toward the playground. Hey! His voice was thunder. The boys froze. Jack ripped the rope off Emily's shoulders and shoved Chad back, his eyes blazing. You touch her again, I swear. Chad stumbled, terrified. We were just kidding. Jack took a step closer, his voice low and dangerous. Does that look like a joke to you? Tyler and Max bolted. Chad followed, tripping over his own shoes as he ran. Jack turned to Emily, kneeling beside her. Her face was pale, tears streaking her cheeks. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, trembling. I'm okay." He helped her up, holding her close. "You're safe now. I've got you." For the first time since they'd moved, she didn't try to act brave. She just cried into his chest. That night, the Miller house was silent except for the ticking of the clock. Emily sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket. Jack stood by the window, staring into the dark street. Finally, she spoke. "Dad, please don't do anything crazy." He turned slowly. "Crazy? I know that look. You had it after your missions," she whispered. "You're thinking of payback." Jack exhaled sharply. "They put their hands on you, Emily. They hurt you. That's not something I can just let go. But if you do something, we'll have to move again." He looked at her, really looked, and saw the fear beneath her words. Not fear of Chad. Fear of losing him. He sat beside her, resting a hand on her shoulder. "You're right," he said softly. "I won't do anything stupid. But I will make sure this never happens again." The next morning, Jack was at the Maple Ridge police station. He gave a full statement, names, witnesses, everything. The officer on duty nodded, typing it all up. But when he finished, he said something that made Jack's blood run cold. "Sir, Chad Dalton's mother is on the HOA board. She's friends with the precinct captain. I'll file the report, but..." Jack leaned forward. "But what?" "Just don't expect much to come of it." Jack's jaw tightened. "So, you're saying her influence matters more than my daughter's safety?" The officer sighed. "I'm saying this neighborhood has connections. Be careful." Jack walked out, fists clenched. That evening, Karen Dalton showed up at their door. She was all smiles, the kind that didn't reach her eyes. "Mr. Miller," she began, "I heard about the little misunderstanding at the park yesterday." Jack's eyes narrowed. "Misunderstanding? Your son attacked my daughter." Karen gave a fake laugh. "Boys will be boys. They were just playing around." He stepped closer. He nearly strangled her. Her tone turned cold. "Watch your words, Mr. Miller. This community values civility." "Civility," he echoed. "You want civility after what your kid did?" Karen's smile hardened. "You're new here, so let me give you some advice. Don't make waves. The HOA has a lot of influence in Maple Ridge. You start trouble, and you'll find life here difficult." Jack stared at her for a long, dangerous second. Then he said quietly, "You have no idea who you're threatening." And he closed the door in her face. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. Every creak in the house made her jump. Jack sat at the kitchen table, his laptop open, searching through neighborhood bylaws and legal statutes. He'd been through battlefields and political wars, but this was personal. He found that the HOA had no authority to interfere with criminal matters. They could issue fines, enforce lawn height, or regulate mailboxes, but they couldn't silence a federal report. He picked up his phone and called an old contact, Lieutenant Eric Shaw, his former Navy SEAL teammate who now worked private security. "Eric, I need a favor. Background check on the Dalton family, and I want to know who the HOA's really connected to." "Roger that," came the voice on the other end. "You in trouble, Jack?" "Not yet," Jack said, glancing toward Emily's room. "But if they come near my daughter again, they will be." The next morning, Emily walked into school with her head held higher than before. Chad was there, bruised pride hidden behind fake laughter. He sneered. "Hey, Superman show up again?" Emily didn't reply, just stared him down. But this time, something in Chad's eyes flickered. Fear. Because he knew what had happened at the park. The look in Jack's eyes when he ran toward him wasn't something you forgot. At home that afternoon, a white envelope was taped to their door. It bore the HOA seal. Jack tore it open. "Notice of community violation. Mr. Miller, your recent unneighborly conduct and public disturbance at Maple Ridge Park are in direct violation of HOA guidelines regarding community harmony. You are hereby fined $1,200 and required to attend a disciplinary hearing next week. Karen Dalton, HOA President." Jack laughed a low, dangerous laugh. They'd turned his daughter's assault into a fine. He folded the letter slowly. "All right, Karen," he muttered. "You want to fight? You just got one." For most people, an HOA letter meant stress. For Jack Miller, it was a declaration of war. He'd faced insurgents, mercenaries, and warlords across the world, but never imagined his next enemy would be a suburban committee with matching polos and clipboards. Still, he knew something about battle. You don't fight blind. You gather intel. The next morning, Jack met his old friend and SEAL brother, Eric Shaw, at a diner off Route 17. Eric slid into the booth across from him, laptop under one arm, mug of coffee in hand. "You look like hell," he said. "HOA life," Jack replied dryly. "What did you find?" Eric flipped the laptop open and turned the screen. Karen Dalton's been HOA president for 6 years. In that time, she's filed over 70 complaints, most of them targeting anyone new, single parents, and retirees who can't fight back. Jack leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "And the police captain?" "Captain Reynolds. He's her brother-in-law. She's got the whole town wrapped around her finger." Jack's jaw clenched. "So that's why the officer brushed it off." "Exactly." "Oh, and one more thing," Eric added, scrolling down. "She's been embezzling HOA funds, funneling money into a beautification project that doesn't exist." Jack smirked. "Now that's interesting." Eric grinned. "You planning to go full recon?" "Not yet," Jack said, sipping his coffee. "But I'm done playing nice." That afternoon, Jack arrived at the so-called disciplinary hearing. It was being held in the Maple Ridge Clubhouse, a building that looked like it belonged in a brochure. Brick walls, flower beds, and an American flag fluttering in the wind. Inside, 5 board members sat at a long table. Karen Dalton sat in the center, pearls around her neck, and that fake smile plastered on her face. "Mr. Miller," she said sweetly, "thank you for joining us. Please take a seat." Jack didn't. "I'll stand." "Suit yourself," she replied. "Now, regarding the disturbance you caused at the park." Jack interrupted. "You mean the part where your son assaulted my daughter?" Karen's smile faltered, but she quickly recovered. "There's no evidence of that." Jack pulled out his phone and tapped a video. The security feed from the park. Eric had retrieved it overnight. On the screen, the footage clearly showed Chad grabbing Emily, the rope, and Jack running in. Karen's face drained of color. The room went silent. "I suggest," Jack said calmly, "you choose your next words very carefully." One of the board members cleared his throat nervously. "Mr. Miller, let's remain civil." Jack looked at him. "Civility ends when your board excuses assault and extortion." Karen tried to regain control. "Even so, that doesn't excuse your behavior toward my son." Jack raised an eyebrow. "You mean saving my daughter's life?" He placed a printed document on the table, the police report he'd filed, along with copies of Karen's fake fines and HOA bylaws. "And by the way," he added, "you have no legal authority to fine me for anything that happens on public property. You're operating outside your charter." The other board members exchanged uneasy looks. Karen forced a laugh. "Mr. Miller, you don't understand how our community works." "Oh, I do," Jack said, his voice low and steady. "It works on intimidation, fear, people too tired or scared to push back." He leaned closer. "But I'm not scared of you." He turned and walked out, leaving Karen glaring after him. That night, Jack sat in his office with the lights off, typing up a report. It wasn't to the HOA or even the local authorities. This was for the State Housing Oversight Board and the IRS. Eric had sent him everything: proof of Karen's embezzlement, her fake landscaping invoices, even emails showing kickbacks to the local police union. Jack compiled it all neatly, attached evidence files, and sent it off with a single line at the end. "This board has been operating as a personal fiefdom, funded through fraud and intimidation. I'm requesting immediate state audit and legal review." Then he sat back, exhaling. Emily appeared at the door. "Dad." He looked up. "Hey, sweetheart. Can't sleep?" She shook her head and patted over. "Are you going to get in trouble for this?" Jack smiled softly. "No. But some people are." The next morning, Karen Dalton's world began to crumble. First, a letter arrived from the state HOA authority, notifying the Maple Ridge Board of an immediate audit and suspension of all financial activity. Then 2 uniformed men from the county sheriff's office arrived, this time, not under her control. They carried a warrant. Residents watched as Karen was escorted from the clubhouse, protesting loudly. "This is ridiculous. I run this community. You can't do this." But they could, and they did. Meanwhile, Jack and Emily were on their porch, sipping cocoa. A few neighbors stopped by, people who had once avoided them, to say thank you. "None of us had the guts to stand up to her," one man admitted. "You did what we all wanted to do." Jack nodded humbly. "I didn't do it for thanks. I did it because no one messes with my family." Emily smiled, leaning against him. "You kind of are Superman," she said teasingly. He chuckled. "More like the grumpy veteran version." But the peace didn't last long. That evening, a black SUV pulled up to the edge of their driveway. Chad Dalton stepped out, his face pale, hands shoved in his pockets. Jack walked over slowly. "Something you want, kid?" Chad hesitated, then muttered, "I'm sorry." Jack folded his arms. "Say that again." Chad looked up. "I'm sorry for what I did. I shouldn't have. I didn't mean for it to go that far." Jack studied him for a moment, then nodded. "It takes guts to admit that. Don't waste the lesson." Chad nodded and turned to leave, looking smaller than he ever had before. Later that night, Emily asked, "Do you forgive him?" Jack sighed. "Forgiveness doesn't erase what he did, but it lets us move on." She smiled softly. "Mom would have said the same thing." He smiled back. "Yeah, she would have." In the weeks that followed, Maple Ridge changed. The HOA was restructured under new leadership. Karen Dalton faced charges for embezzlement and corruption. Her influence shattered like glass. Neighbors once divided by fear began working together again, kids playing freely, fences mended, and smiles returning to porches. Jack and Emily didn't stay forever. A few months later, they packed up and left for the coast, a small house overlooking the ocean, quiet and peaceful. One evening, as the sun dipped below the waves, Emily looked out and said, "Do you think there are people like her everywhere?" Jack nodded. "There always are." "But people like you too?" she asked. He smiled. "That's the balance of the world, sweetheart. Someone's gotta stand up when others can't." She took his hand. "Superman?" He laughed softly. "Nah, just a dad doing his job." The morning air in the coastal town smelled of salt and pine. The waves outside Jack Miller's new home rolled softly, brushing against the sand like time itself was taking a deep breath. It had been 6 months since the storm, 6 months since the HOA incident that changed everything. Emily sat on the porch steps, sketchbook on her lap. The scars, both visible and invisible, had started to fade. Her drawings were brighter now, sunsets, lighthouses, her father's old navy cap resting on a post. Jack, coffee in hand, leaned against the railing. His beard had grown in fuller, streaked with gray. He looked calmer now, though the instinctive alertness in his eyes never completely left. "Sleep okay?" he asked softly. Emily nodded, not looking up from her drawing. "Yeah, I had that dream again, though." Jack frowned slightly. "The park." She nodded. "But this time it ended different. You were already there." He smiled faintly. "Wish I could have been faster." She looked up at him and grinned. "You were fast enough, Dad." Sunrise the world after the HOA. News of the Maple Ridge scandal had spread far beyond their little community. Headlines read things like, "HOA president arrested for fraud and abuse of authority." "Local veteran exposes corruption in suburban neighborhood." Jack's name wasn't in the articles. He'd refused interviews, wanting peace, not attention. But within military circles, word got around. His old teammates sent messages that ranged from classic Miller justice to "you always find a way to win the right fight." Still, part of him carried guilt. Guilt that Emily had gone through something so cruel. That in a peaceful world, evil still found ways to hide behind rules and fences. He'd seen darkness in war, but nothing stung like seeing it in his own backyard. House a knock at the door. It was a Saturday when a knock came at the door. Jack opened it to find Chad Dalton standing there again, but this time, not in fear or shame. He was dressed neatly, holding a sealed envelope. Jack's expression hardened out of habit. "Chad." "Mr. Miller," the boy said respectfully. "I came to say thank you." Jack tilted his head. "For what?" "For not destroying me when you could have. For not pressing charges." Jack studied him. The kid looked older now, not in years but in the way trauma carves maturity into the soul. Chad continued. "My mom's still in court. I'm living with my dad now, in another city. But I wanted you to know, I joined a volunteer group. We work with veterans. I guess I wanted to make up for what I did." For the first time, Jack smiled genuinely. "That's a good start, son. Keep doing that, not to erase what happened but to make something better out of it." Chad nodded. "I will." He handed over the envelope. "It's from the HOA, the new HOA. They wanted to send this." Jack opened it after the boy left. Inside was a handwritten note. "To Jack Miller, thank you for standing up when no one else did. You reminded us that communities need courage more than control." Below was a list of signatures, neighbors who had once been too afraid to speak up. Jack folded the note and tucked it into the wooden box on a shelf labeled Family. Waterwave, a father's promise. That evening, Jack and Emily walked along the beach, barefoot in the cool sand. The sky burned orange and pink, waves whispering secrets between them. "Dad," Emily said quietly. "Yeah. Do you ever miss it? The Navy, I mean. The missions, the danger?" Jack thought for a moment. "Sometimes. But I've seen enough battles. Now, I just want to protect what's in front of me." She smiled softly. "You mean me?" He grinned. "You, and this piece we've got." She looked at him, eyes reflecting the sunset. "You know, when they said Superman gonna fly in and save you, I thought about that for weeks. I kept wishing someone would." Jack looked down at her. "But then I realized," she continued, "Superman doesn't have to wear a cape. He just has to show up when it matters." Jack's throat tightened. "You're growing up too fast, kiddo." She laughed. "You're just getting old, Dad. Balance scale, justice comes full circle." Months later, the case against Karen Dalton concluded. She was found guilty of fraud, embezzlement, and obstruction of justice. Her sentence, 5 years in prison and restitution to all HOA members she'd exploited. It wasn't revenge. It was accountability, the kind Jack believed in. One of the residents, now the new HOA president, called Jack to inform him. "We're renaming the park," she said, "after Emily. For bravery and resilience." Jack paused. "You sure that's what she wants?" "I asked her already," the woman said, smiling. "She said only if the sign says, 'A place for everyone.'" Jack laughed. "That's my girl." Speech ballooned the last lesson. One quiet night, Jack sat by the fireplace while Emily slept upstairs. The fire crackled softly, casting long shadows against the walls. He took out a photo, Emily as a little girl, sitting on her mother's lap. He whispered softly, "She's stronger than both of us combined, you know." Outside, the wind moved through the trees, like the world itself was listening. Jack thought about all he'd learned from combat, from loss, from fatherhood. You can't stop cruelty from existing, he thought. But you can stand between it and the ones you love. That's the only fight worth fighting. Man Superhero, the ending scene. The next morning, as the sun broke over the horizon, Emily was already outside, painting on a new canvas. Jack brought her a mug of hot cocoa and stood behind her quietly. The painting showed a shadowy figure holding a child's hand, the figure tall, strong, and faceless, like a guardian. "What's that one called?" Jack asked. She smiled. 47 seconds. Jack nodded slowly, emotion tightening his chest. She turned and hugged him. "Thanks for being my Superman, Dad." He smiled and whispered, "Always, kiddo." The camera of life zoomed out, the ocean glimmering, the waves rolling endlessly. No capes, no flights, no laser eyes. Just a father, a daughter, and a peace they'd earned the hard way. Because sometimes the real heroes don't fly and they walk beside you.